Sasha Lockley, welcome to Purposely Podcast.
Thank you.
It's been quite a morning, hasn't it?
It has.
It's the morning of first. So the first of me is the first live interview with a Purposely guest. So brilliant.
Congratulations.
Have you been on the telly?
I've been on the telly.
That's crazy. I've done that and had that experience myself. It's scary as all hell.
Yeah.
How was it?
It was good. It was good. They were so lovely and welcoming, but it went like a flash and they asked lots of really cool questions. And you know what my real reflection is, right? Is that it's the first time I've been on telly and I've been able to have my own voice rather than being like an employer or
corporate script.
A corporate script. I could just say what I really thought. And I'm kind of waiting to see whether some of the things I said were a bit controversial because I laid into buy now, pay laters a little bit and finance companies still charging ridiculous interest rates and stupid fees and stuff. But, actually it's the conversation that needs to happen. So I enjoyed it. Thought it was fun.
Did you put yourself through the ringer beforehand? Did you have much sleep?
No. No, I did have sleep. No, I like... The thing is, if you're just being yourself and you're just talking about what you actually believe in, then there isn't a lot of anxiety because you're not trying to pretend, Whereas when you're trying to toe a corporate line or say things that you've been told to say, then I think that's where the anxiety and the sleepless nights comes from. If you're trying to write to a script, talk to a script, You
haven't got back to the office and worried about the boss phoning up and saying that you did a really good job or a really bad job.
No.
You haven't got any of that concern.
It was my team. My team were messaging and then my husband was sending me screenshots of me with very strange facial expressions. So I think maybe I should have Botox so that my face doesn't kind of, I don't know, go like a piece of elastic maybe.
Have you watched it back?
No, I haven't seen it yet. I might, after this, I might watch it and go, oh, Mark, that was horrific. You need to not talk about the fog. Oh. But I think it was all right.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
So you're the co-founder and CEO of Money Sweetspot.
I am.
What's its mission? What's its purpose? What does it do?
Its mission is to help people out of high-cost debt so they can get on with their lives.
People who've fallen on hard times, have had something happen in their lives.
Yeah, so we're really there for everybody because if you take a step back, there are some fundamental beliefs that I have, and they are that people are good and that bad things can happen to any of us, and that life's unpredictable. So those bad things can really impact people's lives, and what that means is that debt goes up, you miss a few payments on bills, but you weren't a bad person. You were a good person that had a bad thing happen to you. So that's why Sweetspot only focuses on debt consolidation, sweeping up lots and lots of debt at a social lending rate and helping people to get out of debt and on with their lives rather than kind of upselling, cross-selling, trying to be the biggest finance company or make the most profit. We want to lose our customers.
Yep. So you're a social enterprise. You are anti-growth in some ways, aren't you? Because you want to lose your customers. You want to help them move on with their lives.
Yeah, it's kind of conscious growth, really, like being around for as long as New Zealanders need us. And, debt's probably not going away as an issue because life's unpredictable. So I'd really like that we had more competitors that were trying to help people rather than harm people. Yeah.
And beyond consolidating debt, you support people who are going through that. Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, so we're one of the first places in the world to link a financial reset, which is essentially a debt consolidation loan, with engaging in financial education. So our customers, if they engage in financial education, they also get more money off their loan so that they can get out of debt faster, or they can choose to put the money that they've earned into a savings account. So having kind of a rainy day fund as well. And then the other thing that we do is that if people are staying the course with their own financial reset, that creates a charitable donation for things that they care about. So the choice is with them rather than us saying we're a social enterprise and isn't it amazing that we make a donation to blah. We don't believe in that. We believe in people having the choice to make donations for things that they care about, and acknowledging that a financial reset takes work. Avoiding new debt takes work, especially in this environment. So why wouldn't we celebrate that work and reward that work?
And it's treating people like adults, right? So
that's the thing, right? Treating people like adults, acknowledging life's unpredictable, getting rid of the parent-child mentality that can happen in financial services that drives me bonkers. That was your phone? Oh, no. Acknowledging that people can move through their own journey. One of the things that really annoys me, right, is that there's this assumption, I think, in the industry that if people aren't paying their loans or their bills, that they somehow need to budget better. That's what you need. You need a spreadsheet. You need to do a budget. Well, it's actually rubbish. And that's a bit controversial, but I think it's rubbish because people I've met that have the least amount of money are actually the best budgeters.
Yeah, that's my experience as well.
Yeah.
It's so true.
Yeah. So why do most financial organizations, when people can't pay, go, oh, let's do you a budget? How about we ask, how do you already manage your money? Assume that people know where their money goes first. And some people might not. And there might be things that they didn't realize. But maybe start from a position of assuming people know their own lives and their own situation first.
Because a lot of people are living within their means, but if there's any incident in life, and I know this from, leading organizations, if the pay date changes or there's some incident around not paying people, it's all tightly engineered or geared.
Yeah. It's one thing can tip people over, so lots of our customers have had a life event, something that's happened. It could have even just been that they were sick for a few weeks, but then maybe they hadn't got much sick leave left because they had COVID during the COVID times. Family overseas with illnesses is a big one we're seeing at the moment. So just needing to send money back to family overseas to pay for treatment. Navigating higher mortgage rates. So people are coming to us to keep their homes at the moment and refinance their, personal debt so that they can pay the extra $500 or $600 that they need to pay now for their mortgage. Dental fees, pets, just stuff, car tires.
Yeah.
Stuff that just costs money. And if you're finely balanced and you're juggling, it's great. You can just keep juggling. But the emotion of that takes a lot of energy. And then it doesn't take much to drop a ball. But that can happen to any of us. It isn't, the people that I think lots of people assume are vulnerable. It's many of us now. It's most of us.
Yeah, it could be any of us. So you're a startup social enterprise. Tell us a bit about how you set up, because you've only just launched. You've been around doing this for a while personally, but you just launched. Tell us a bit about how you're set up and how you're structured and where the capital comes from and
all that good stuff.
Yeah.
I'm just going to say that it's been really interesting because when you're a social enterprise financial services organization that's basically saying you want to lose customers, you don't want to be the biggest, you don't want to make lots of profit, you don't want to create lots of new products, you don't want to upsell, and you just want to focus on one thing, that's a really interesting place to try and get investors for and getting funding to lend from. So we did open on the 24th of March this year, so 3 months, and we did a soft launch back in December. And we get our loan capital to lend to our customers from BNZ under their social impact financial inclusion strategy. So they've got $50 million to invest in stuff that helps financial harm, I guess, predatory lending practices. And then our investors are charities. So our lead investor is Christian Savings Bank, and then the Tyndall Foundation, Anglican Care Waipu, and then a couple of brothers who one of them's on the board of Christian Savings Bank, and they heard our pitch, and that was aligned to their family's personal mission as well. So they're also investors.
So getting that early capital, did it need to be philanthropic? Was it because there was a social mission involved?
It didn't need to be philanthropic, but I wanted to make sure that the voice of the investors wouldn't take us away from our mission. And we did get offered money earlier in our journey, but I ultimately decided to say no, because I really didn't believe that they were going to be the right investors for our mission. And I've seen it go wrong before, that, an entrepreneur ends up kind of going in an investor's direction rather than the why they started the business in the first place. So it didn't need to be philanthropic. It needed to be the right people, though.
Yeah. And fascinating name, Money Sweetspot.
Money Sweetspot.
Tell us about where it came from. Like, where did this idea for this social enterprise come from?
Oh, my goodness gracious.
That's a big question, I know.
It's like a massive question. So in October 2019, I was driving over the Harbour Bridge and I was coming back from a choir rehearsal. And I'd been a bit frustrated at work. So I was the head of operations for a big finance company in New Zealand. And I was frustrated because I could see that our customers were going through really hard times, and I would get really upset about the situations that they were in. So people who had lost their jobs, health problems, really hard circumstances.
Were your colleagues getting upset with you?
Or my colleagues.
Because that's not that normal, is it? People seem to
No.
separate themselves out from that stuff. But
Well, it depends who you define as my colleagues, right? So one of the reasons I was hired, and I have been hired for the most of my career, is because I see things differently, and I'm really good at building connections and focusing on people. So I was hired into that job exactly because of that approach, which meant that there was a real big appetite for me to be a bit different.
they knew
And
what they were getting.
they knew what they were getting. But your question is really good, because there's an appetite for how far people are happy to get what they wanted.
Yeah.
And what I realised in October was that my appetite for being relentlessly helpful to people and really helping them out of debt and on with their life was higher than probably I could ever push a traditional industry player. So when I was driving over the Harbour Bridge, what I realised was this matrix moment, that the reason I got so upset.
A matrix moment. That's
I literally call it the matrix moment.
Yeah. So out of body almost.
It was literally, I could see little, I'm going to sound completely bonkers, but it was literally like I could see little circles and how they were all interconnected, and that my own family's story was connected to the story of our customers. And that's why I was so affected by it. So when I was growing up, my dad had a bus company, and we're from Stafford in the middle of England. Do you know it?
I do.
Lovely place. So. Anyway, and and he was kind of pretty entrepreneurial. But my granddad, who was a farmer, died really unexpectedly. We didn't expect that to happen. So my dad needed to go and milk cows. And my dad's business went bump. It went bankrupt. So we hid
Going
behind.
back to that, it can happen to anyone, right?
Yeah, exactly. So my dad wasn't a bad person, but a bad thing happened. My granddad died, literally dropped dead one day at 67. Dad needed to go and help the farm. Cows don't go, oh, don't milk me today. I can see you going through a bit of a tough time. But then the bus company went bankrupt.
So how old were you, and how sort of frontal lobe was it for you? How aware of what was going on for you?
I would have been maybe about 10, 9 or 10. And kind of before that, like my mum ran pubs and was a bookkeeper. We're not a well-off family by any stretch, but my mum and dad were both trying to kind of build us out of where we'd started. So for my dad to have this business fail, knocked him off his feet really. And he's late 60s now, and he never really has found his feet again financially.
Yeah, it's fascinating, because a lot of people talk about seeing their dads emotional for the first time, or seeing their dads at a weak point or a tough point. Was that the same for you? He had been pretty strong before that?
Yeah. He ended up at the doctor's. He ended up on antidepressants. He ended up crying. We ended up like round a table counting out bloody 2p pieces to try and pay his staff their wages, because we've got no money left. We did hide from the door knocking. And he tried a few bits and bobs after that. But I think he kind of lost his self-belief. I think he's super smart. Yeah, but I think he could have been so much more, but this debt defined him, and that situation defined the rest of his life. And I don't want that for anybody, really. Yeah.
And had that led in some way, in another way, led that to you to financial services?
Yeah, so it was my mum's fault, really. So my mum, when I was growing up, my mum said, you need to be an accountant because then you'll be rich. So I went and I was an accountant, even though I don't really like numbers. I knew that was potentially a way of us earning good money and, being safe, I guess, because being safe was probably a really key motivator for my mum, that I was going to have a good job, keep it for as long as you can, earn good money, and never end up in the situation we're in. So that safety was a big motivator. So I did what my mum told me. I was very well behaved at 18.
So that taking risks in life is big for you, right? Because you've had an experience where there's been this life incident that's really knocked your family. So actually stepping away from a job or taking a risk is big for you.
It's the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. Like, like it makes me emotional, like so hard, you know.
How do you overcome the emotion to do it?
Because of this matrix moment, right?
Right.
Like I
Yeah.
knew that I had to try. And the worst that could happen is I failed. But in failing, I might have helped a few people, and I will have learned something, or other people may have learned. Like that's the worst that could have happened. And to me, it was like I had no choice. I felt like every step in my life until that point was required, and that I needed to give this a crack. And it was never about me knowing the answer. It was that I wanted to see if I could talk to enough people to find the right question almost, you know. I had to. Didn't have a choice.
So did Money Sweetspot come up as a name in your head on that matrix moment? Like,
it's always been Money Sweetspot from day one. And because it's about getting people back to their sweet spot. But then as an organization, acknowledging that we're just going to do one thing really well and focus on our sweet spot. And I've never wanted to displace good people already doing good things. So integrating with good programs, community, and other providers of stuff is a key part of how we do business, rather than trying to be all things to all people or be the biggest. It's about being really smart around how we can slot in and
the sweet spot.
The sweet spot. And it makes it dead easy.
And so you're on that harbour bridge, which is a tricky drive. How quickly were you keen to get off that motorway and start writing this stuff down? And then tell us about what next.
I wrote it down straight away, literally. And we talked before coming onto this that I've actually got the piece of paper next to my desk now, which is this map of an ecosystem of social lending and all of those good things. So that was October 2019, and I left my job in March 2020.
And I've heard you say elsewhere that you needed sort of permission almost. So you joined a fellowship to give yourself almost social permission, or like it was, you need to tell everyone that you were doing something
legitimate. Yeah. I needed, and when you change job, you've always got the next one to go to. You never go, oh, I'm just going to leave my job and I'm just going to sit and think about it. Like, people look at you a bit weird. So I did join at the Edmund Hillary Fellowship, and it's a social kind of entrepreneurial game-changing thing. So that felt like it aligned for me. And my mum's passed away a wee while ago, but I felt like it made the leap or the risk more tolerable for her in my head, that I was going to a something that I could always leave as well. So it was a baby step, if you like, of feeling less alone in taking the jump.
And I think for entrepreneurs, a big part of it is permission from home. So, because, your partner becomes an entrepreneur as well by default. So you had permission from home. Like, when you got off that harbour bridge, did you go home and explain it to your partner?
Like, I'm really lucky, right? So my husband, Tim, from the day that we got together, we've had crazy conversations, and I think he was kind of instrumental in me realizing that I didn't have to have a job, and he was supportive. And it's not that he's some rich millionaire, he's not, he's the opposite, but we'd always find a way of trying to navigate it. So it was permission, but more from a I reckon you could do something positive. And I think the divine timing of it, if you like, is that in March 2020, I actually needed a second spine operation. So I'd had one and I'd gone back to work too quick. And then the universe, I think, tells you, now look, you didn't listen to me. So it kind of all aligned that I joined the fellowship in December of 2019. And I left my job in March 2020 at the same time as having a spinal fusion. So it was kind of a natural chapter where I was stopping. And then, I mean, my husband jokes and he says, you didn't need to manifest a global pandemic to make you stop. Like, that's going a bit over the top. But, it actually was, it was a real defining month for lots of people, and in our family especially.
Yeah. Because you have a burning passion for this, right? So the way you turn up, and it all makes sense now because it's deeply personal.
Deeply personal,
yeah.
And it's something I struggle with, I think, because if we fail, but I keep reminding myself that we've already helped people,
And finding a co-founder So
my poor co-founder.
you had a few goes at that, didn't you?
I had a few goes at it.
Because you written some stuff down. You had a business plan.
Wrote some stuff down.
Yeah.
Had a big piece of A3 paper, lots of colouring pens. That's how I work. And had lots of conversations. And when I first left my job, I was almost scared to have an opinion. Like, I knew there was a problem, and I knew that this was really important and deep within my soul. But it was a little bit weird because I'd never been an entrepreneur before. Who am I to think that I know how to be an entrepreneur? And it's this like sexy word that, felt a little bit elitist to me when I first left. So what that meant was that I had a journey where I wasn't being front and center and I wasn't being vocal. And I think what that meant was that the people that I was trying to figure this out with, it didn't work because I wasn't showing up how I actually needed to.
So those colleagues in the finance company wouldn't have seen entrepreneurial Sasha. Like they would have not picked you out as.
No, they would have said, well, I know what they said. My colleagues would have said that I'm really good at growing things that already exist rather than starting something from scratch. And I'm really good at transforming and changing things, which is true. I am. Back to this people piece and the connections. But they wouldn't have thought that I would have started it. And they didn't believe I would.
So when did that change? When you start talking about it in a different way and you put it out into the world, and then the real Sasha Lockley turned up to attract the right co-founder? Because there must have been that switch, right?
Yeah, there was a switch. And it was when I met Dan Mason-Garb and James Palmer at Christian Savings Bank. And I was nearly giving up and I'll go find a job. I can go back and earn my good salary. This is too hard. And I think what happened was that I kind of let it go and I just vomited out actually what I thought. And by doing that, then people started showing up. So I think I kind of let down the facade. It's kind of relearning the same lesson I'd already learned in the corporate world, because that's a lesson I'd already had. But I needed to learn it again. And that's what changed.
And that resonates for me, actually. You need to build a community around an idea or a community around a mission. And until you do that, it's just you and your thoughts. And those thoughts, for me personally, I start having other thoughts, so they get distracted on the mission. And so putting it out there, getting some energy back from those guys. And that
Some
was the
feedback.
difference. Yeah.
Yeah, some feedback and knowing that there were people out there that were willing to listen and curious enough to try and kind of I was going to say the word tolerate my weirdness, but that was great because then we could have all these strange conversations about what a new world could look like. What does a new financial system look like? What is the baby step? And the more you have those conversations, the more energy it builds. And you're right, then there's a community of people talking about this idea, and then the idea takes its own life.
And the road to the co-founder.
Yeah.
And because you're opposites, right? Tell us who he is.
Oh, poor Rig.
Right.
So around the same time that I met Dan and James, I asked Rig, so my co-founder's called Rig Chapman, and I asked him for a beer down in Newmarket. And I knew him back in 2015, a long time ago. And he came to do some consulting work at the place I was working at. And I hated him, because he's all about data and numbers. And he told me things about my loan book that I didn't like because I'm all about the customer. And how dare you think that Frances isn't going to pay because she's renting? Like, how dare you? So I really didn't like him, and we argued a lot. But when I was kind of nearly giving up on Sweetspot and had this conversation then with Dan and James, I then knew that Rig was the right person to talk to, because, to have a me, you need the opposite of me for us to actually deliver.
You really knew that. Yeah.
And I met him at the pub down the road from here, with a view to actually getting him to do some data modeling for me around the problem. And then when we were talking, he said, no, this is my life's mission too. This is the problem I want to solve.
Amazing.
And I guess the rest is history.
Yeah.
So we built a pitch deck and a startup in lockdown.
and getting those early investors. So, the friends and family, those early believers, how challenging was that?
Really hard. So hard. And hard because we were doing it in lockdown. So we're literally, we met Sir Stephen over a ham sandwich virtually at his kitchen table, for example. So there isn't that kind of in-person connection. They're not relationships that I have because I am, ex-corporate, and they're not relationships that Rig had either. And we're trying to do this weird thing about losing customers and not being the biggest. So we're not venture capital. We're not necessarily philanthropic, for most. Social enterprise has this, unclear definition, I think, still. So it was really hard. But in saying all of that, I knew, a little bit like I knew with my Matrix moment, I knew to stick with it with Dan at Christian Savings. And I knew the rest of it would work out. I just knew. So it took a long time. So we finished our capital raise in January of 2022, but the cash came in June 2022. So that's 2 years worth of figuring stuff out before we had money in the bank.
Yeah, that shows real focus. So you've broken your normal way of working. Fantastic. And we're live. Like it's, we're sitting here. You've been on live on Tally. You've had a bunch of emails. People are reacting. Tell us a bit about the early months and how it's, because I know that you've been, if not inundated, you've certainly had a lot of take up.
Yeah. So at the moment, we've provided $3.2 million worth of financial resets to Kiwis, 132 customers, but we've helped 360 odd families with access to financial education and community providers and all sorts of other information as well, even if we don't provide a loan. And I think we've estimated that we've saved those 130 odd customers $1.2 million worth of interest over the life of their loan. So $3 million of loans, $1 million of interest saved. So that shows how ridiculous some of the margins are that exists out there. And our customers have donated $3,000 through the Good Registry to causes they care about. And they've engaged in the financial education. So one of the things was, I was like, life's busy. Are people really going to engage in financial education to get extra money off the loan? That was a thought I thought that might happen. And that's what's new. It's one of the new things, one of the first things that we're doing that hasn't happened around the world. But people are. It's epic. People are, I was going to say sucking up, but people are grabbing all of the information that we're providing. So they've saved an extra $2,500 off their loans. So interest rate savings massive. We don't charge all the fees that lots of other places do. Engaging in financial education, extra money off your loan, out of debt, and donating to charity. Like, I'm stoked that this tiny little baby step, and this is just a start. Like, these are just I wonder if these things could work, and they are. Like, it's.
Do you think people are surprised at the fact that you offer choice? Like they're empowered to choose from a suite of options. Like that's probably not what they expected when they walked towards you, right?
Yeah.
They're probably used to being picked up and told which direction to walk.
Yeah, exactly. So I think there's a couple of things when people reach out to us. The feedback is that we're not judgmental and we listen to story, and that's true, because we want to understand kind of how people have got here and where they want to go there. So what the reason for the financial reset is, and we focus a lot around that for the journey of the financial reset, the why, rather than just the pure numbers. And I think, the first thing they get from us is the voucher for the Good Registry to donate as an acknowledgement for their individual commitment can create something with community. So
them choosing who to donate to is so important, isn't it?
Yeah.
More important than you actually probably realise.
Because people get told what to do so much, especially in financial services. So we work really hard to not tell people, but to show people what's going on. So as part of the process with us, people get a copy of their spending analysis, not so that we're judging them. It's so, hey, here it is. You have a look, see how you feel. Here's your credit report. This is how you can look at the other credit reports. So kind of empowering people with stuff that they can choose to look at, not requiring them to. But what we've learned is that by taking that approach, most of our customers, look and are curious and do engage and are looking at the financial education that we provide, which is kind of local content related to New Zealand, but also through a partnership with an organisation called Nudge, which is kind of global financial education content as well. So again, choice there as well.
What have you learned from your customers as an organisation? How much has changed from that original, MVP?
MVP. What have I learned? People are in more debt than I thought they'd be. Scary debt. So our biggest loan is $51,000. Our average loan is 25, and I think we'd forecast 15. What I've learned is that I thought that the system judged people, and it's more judgmental than I thought, even, which was a shame, really, because I was kind of not defending the industry, but I know that there are good operators within the financial services industry that aren't trying to screw customers over. So I was surprised to see some of the debts coming through. And I think we're almost unique there because we get to see all of the different loans out there, the banks, the finance companies, all the different types of credit providers. And some of the stuff that's in there still is just awful. But
Predatory, you talked about it.
Predatory, harmful, I think. I don't think it's predatory now, but I do think it's harmful. And I think it's harmful because if people can't pay their loans because life's happened, the industry still charges a default fee and default interest. And I think it's stupid.
Is there is there a thread that runs through a lot of your clients? And is there a story you can tell us, maybe not sharing the names, but where you've been sort of blown away with the impact you've had?
Yeah, there's a few. So the thread of the story is that there's a life event that's happened, good, bad, or indifferent, around illness, new babies, relationship breakdowns, changes in housing, relocation for work, coming to New Zealand for the first time, maybe.
Yeah, I know about that.
Yeah, I know about that one. And the juggle, they've dropped the ball. And that's become something that I haven't been able to come back from. So one of our first customers, we wrote our first loan on the 19th of December, 2022. And this guy, we consolidated some debt for him. It was $47,000, which is really silly because our product rule when we went live was meant to be $40,000. Like, oh no, we won't lend more. And then one of the first loans we wrote was over that, so that's what we learned. But in that loan, we consolidated some debt and bought some bunk beds so that his grandkids could stay. So in 6 months, he's gone from having high cost debt, renting, thinking about, what could be next. And now he's buying a house with his wife.
Amazing.
In 6 months. And that's phenomenal to me. We lost our first customer. I think it was in February. So we consolidated their debt in December. And by February, they were able to refinance their mortgage and keep their home because we've been able to help them out in that moment.
You're probably the only enterprise who celebrates losing customers.
Brilliant though, isn't it, right? And then there's a family of 6 from far north, and they relocated to Auckland for education and medical support for some of their children. But that move was expensive, and navigating the high cost of living here was really hard. That family, again, it was over $40,000, but we saved them $1,000 a month in repayments. $1,000 a month. So this isn't kind of, I was talking about, it's just $50. So what difference does it make? It's $939 every month that family's got in their pocket. So it can be life changing for people. It's kind of, I think we worked it out. It's like for every $25,000 loan, we save people $17,000 in interest, estimated based on kind of an average of them paying 28% before they came.
Phenomenal. And I think what's almost reassuring is this is not about people being bad with money or bad with budgeting or something they lack. It's about life running over them.
Real life, like real life and real people. And, when that happens, we should support people rather than judge them. And I think I used to have to explain that, people are good and bad things can happen to any of us. And then COVID happened and pilots were losing their jobs and people that, had historically been perfectly well off, thank you.
Yeah, that became very real.
It became really real. And I think that probably helped in the capital raise and the funding that, to lend to that. Oh, I get it now. Yeah, so it's not bad people, bad at budgeting, impoverished. It's life happened.
And looking a bit more at yourself, and so you had that real desire to be successful, to lift yourself out of or protect yourself from some of the experiences your parents had. What's your journey been with money? Because you've done some life stuff, like you're not from New Zealand, you're from the UK. I think immigrating is really expensive. You look back and go, wow, that cost a lot of money.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really lucky, right? So, and I'm super grateful. So, I to kind of back it up a bit, I did go to uni when I was 18, but I dropped out within 3 months. It wasn't for me. I learned by chatting, relating, rather than, and I was doing an accounting degree. But my mum was mortified, and she thought I was going to run a pub forever or be a pub singer or something. But I was really determined still to be an accountant because I didn't want to let my mum down. But I also thought that it was a way of us kind of building our family. It's not about me being successful; it's about building our family out. So the reason I was able to come to New Zealand was because I was one of the first non-graduates hired by KPMG.
Yeah.
And
I love the serious fraud theme to this.
oh, I know,
So
it's
let's
hilarious.
just check this out. So you don't like numbers.
Don't like numbers.
Didn't really like being an accountant.
No.
You don't particularly like detail, do you? You're not a
No,
massive
not
detail
really.
person.
Not really.
You're a people person.
People
You're a
person.
connector.
Colouring pens.
So you arrive. I mean, tell us a bit about because it was quite an interesting story around how you reached out, made a call to somebody at KPMG, and they said, "Wow, I've got a position in New Zealand," and you're off.
So like, I really think that I've got this really strong gut and intuition. And one day I was sat in the Birmingham office in KPMG, and me and my first husband had nearly finished renovating a house, and I was like, can't do this anymore. Picked up the phone, and the person I rang happened to be in a room with all of the global leaders of KPMG Forensic, because I was a forensic accountant at the time, and went, oh, hang on, I'll just put you on hold. And they gave me like 3 or 4 countries that I could potentially go to. Picked New Zealand because the job was to help create something new, which now I look back, go, oh, well, these people that say I can't create new things, actually, I create new things all the time. New, cultures, businesses. And I was in New Zealand, I think 6 weeks later. My first husband was also equally tolerant of my, we're going to do this. So we landed in January 2006, having never been further than, I think we'd been to the Maldives on our honeymoon. Didn't really know what New Zealand was. Probably thought there was a bridge between New Zealand and Australia, but I don't really want to admit that.
Did you think the weather was going to be better than it was?
I did think that. And I remember we got to Auckland. 2 things. We got to Auckland, and I was in one of the apartments in the viaduct that work had put me up in, watching the telly, and it was car yard adverts on the weekend. And I was like, what have we come to? And then I thought, oh, well, we'll just go for a walk around this Auckland place. It's in January. So I wore white linen trousers and a white top. I was a bit younger, thank goodness. Walked down Queen Street, 4 seasons in one day, ended up drenched, looking half naked actually up Queen Street. And then I realised that the weather was a bit unpredictable, So I felt really lucky to not have to pay the costs of getting here, and came in on secondment. And I never thought that we would stay. I said to my family, we're not going to be those people, because I didn't hate England and I didn't hate my family. We were always going to be going back.
You're just son by the stage, or?
No, we had Toby in July 2008, and the intention was to have him here and then go back. But we went back in the December of 2008 when Toby was 6 months old, and realised that the lifestyle for children here is so much better than where we're from. So we took the hard decision to stay here, and that has been really difficult.
The connection broken with family.
Yeah, and you can't kind of control how your kids are as an essence, as an energy. And the most important thing for Toby is family. He would like to be living in the UK, and he doesn't really understand why we live here instead. But I guess you always want what you've not got.
So he's nearly 15, or he's around that age? He's still very much connected with the UK.
Yeah, he wants to go and live there. Yeah, he wants to. We've said that he could go back for a couple of years, and maybe finish his school or go to college there or whatever. But he even sounds a bit English, even though he was born here. He's Yeah, he is super connected to his family still.
And what's your relationship been with New Zealand?
I have been able to be who I really am here. That if I'd have stayed in the UK, you know, kind of navigating the class system, how you talk, what you know. I got told off when I started at KPMG because I wore a dark purple suit and trousers. And in 1999, 2000, women weren't allowed to wear trousers or purple, you know. So whereas here, I mean,
You got purple hair.
I've got purple hair. It changes quite a lot. And I'm not, I don't really need to apologize for being me. That's been what year is it? 2023. That's been a 17-year journey. And I really don't believe that I would have been able to do that in the UK. So here has been welcoming and nourishing.
You talk about priorities as well in New Zealand, being more aligned with who you are. So I think one of the things that really resonated with me, I listened to you on another podcast and you talked about Monday morning in the office and these people ask, what did you buy in the weekend? That so resonated with me. It really, really did. Instead in New Zealand, it's like, which park did you go to? Which beach did you go to?
What did you do?
What did you do? Yeah.
So I think that and I think it still exists, right? English people in the UK have an obsession with cushions. Cushions and sofas and all this, what did you buy? Oh, I don't give a monkeys. That was one of the first conversations I had when we landed, and it stuck with me. What did you do? Who did you see?
I think things might be changing there though, because I've been through quite a few tough times. Are you still really connected to family?
Yeah, I am. Family and friends, a few friends across there. It's a bit weird though, because I came here when I was 25 and I still sound really English, but I think because I've been an adult in New Zealand longer than I was in the UK, I'm a Kiwi adult with an English accent that goes back. So there's a bit of a disconnect in how I see the world compared to my UK family and friends. We just talk a different language. And I've only just realised that.
Yeah, because I'm the opposite. So youth here, childhood here, and then moved to the UK and spent most of my adult life there. So when we came back to New Zealand 4 years ago, I became one of those, what they call ping pong poms. So I arrived and then dragged my family all the way back to the UK and then back to New Zealand again. The really good thing was that all of our furniture was still on the wharf waiting for us when we returned home. But looking back, actually, I don't think people understand the sort of some of the trauma that it means to suddenly just walk out of your life one day, because that's what it felt like. All the stuff you build up professionally. I mean, what's one good thing is global pandemics bring everything into focus, right?
Yep.
And actually, professionally or career becomes less important.
Yeah.
Being comfortable in your own skin and feeling but that's great that you found that here.
Yeah, I have. I mean, it was a meandering journey, don't get me wrong. I mean, working for consulting firms means that you do work ridiculous hours. And I was on the red eye to Australia for weeks on end for many years before I went to the Serious Fraud Office, which was the most hilarious job in the world.
We expect people thinking, I'm going to get found out here because I don't really like numbers, I don't really like detail. Or was actually there was enough people stuff for it to make sense for you?
Well, for me, it was always that the numbers are an outcome. So you can take time to understand a business and the people that lead it and why they lead it. And that was how I was able to stay interested. And it's the same with kind of the forensic stuff, the commercial dispute work that I did. There's kind of there's a human element to how the blooming heck did this happen? Why are you arguing? What's the common ground? So it was still a people element, even though there were numbers. And it's the same with fraud investigations. That it's quite fascinating to understand the different perspectives of an allegation of a crime.
And it's tough or lonely being a CEO. It's tough or lonely being a startup CEO. You sound like you need to draw your energy, I'm talking on a week by week basis here, or, you draw your energy from others. Are there things that you have put in place and disciplines put in place in this new role you have to ensure that you keep your energy levels up, that you keep focused, that you keep bringing the best version of Sasha to the organization? Is there stuff that you're doing?
So I've got a master's in leadership, right? And I used to coach leadership. So I have lots of things that I could coach myself on to look after myself. And I did do quite well for a period of time. But in all honesty, in the last 2 months, lots of the things that would normally keep me well, I haven't been doing, if I'm being really honest. And I swore I'd never be that person.
You're quite critical, or certainly have been in the past, about the hustle
I
culture
hate the
of,
entrepreneurial
yeah.
hustle. Oh,
You
and
got
we're
a
not.
few bugbears, but we'll go on to another couple in a
Oh
minute.
yeah, I have a few things I'm quite vocal about. The hustle things. Yeah. So the things that are important to me are making sure that I have a good balance with my kids and my husband. So I haven't done too bad on that.
'Cause your family's grown, right? You've got 3 kids
Yeah,
now.
I've got three
Yeah.
kids now, 15, 9, and 6. All boys. I am
Wow.
outnumbered in our house. Yep. So we're a noisy house. And I used to sing, and I used to go to the gym. And at the moment, I don't do either of those
Sasha,
things.
you've
I
got to
know.
get back to that.
Yeah,
Definitely the singing, right?
definitely the sing. I really miss singing. Um,
The music
yeah,
started. Can you hear that in the background?
I know. We've got this like a guitar at
Right.
the
Should we
bottom. It's
grab
like
a guitar?
my
You can sing
cue to
now.
start singing. Yeah, but I think what I've realised is that I really like being useful. So even in singing, I would find places to sing at where I could be useful, but then it almost feels like work. And what I need to do, I think, now is to kind of reframe the singing for pleasure and go because I enjoy it rather than I'm being useful or a strong singer or dependable or reliable. I just need to go and let my brain be free. So that's going to take some work to kind of rewire that.
Because we all
And
have those experiences. I think we do. And I've done a few of the Myers-Briggs and Insights. And these, these really good versions of Mark, and there's some slightly ropey versions of Mark. Like when I'm not
yeah,
bringing the best me. What are the not so good versions of you? Like what?
the not so good versions of me are that I'm distractible. So I do have ADHD, which is my magic, and it can be a curse. So I can become quite pingy. It's, bing, bong, bing, and distracted. And when I'm stressed, I can become quite intolerant, impatient. But I think it shows up less at Sweetspot than it would elsewhere because it's my heart. It's not work. Um, yeah, so those are the bad bits of me, I guess.
Autonomy seems to be quite important, probably. I mean, I talked to a leader last night, and they'd gone from like internal promotion to CEO, and he talked about being calmer actually at the top because they had the autonomy, and he had
Yeah,
this understanding that whatever decision he made was going to
yep.
be crucial, but it was, he didn't have that anxiety he had previously.
Yeah, I couldn't be anything else other than the CEO of this. And I think that was why the kind of co-founder thing went a bit meandering, because I needed to go, no, I have to be the CEO of this. And I'm super grounded in that. You're right. I feel almost safer because I'm happy to eyeball our investors, our funders, our customers, because I really know, what we're trying to do. I know the intent. I know our team, who are amazing. So I feel more settled being the boss.
And as work was wrapping up, next 18 months, next 3 years, what does it look like? More capital, more people helped, more lives changed.
Yeah, yeah. So by March next year, that was terrible English, but we'll have provided $35 million worth of financial research to Kiwis and helped over 3,000 families. That's kind of the next target that we've got. But past that, we're not growth for growth's sake. So we'll be the right size for what New Zealanders need. I think there'll be a second product. So I know I said I wanted to lose customers as fast as possible. But the other side of that is that there are people that are coming to New Zealand or new to lending that are equally judged. And their only choice is high cost debt, which then sets people up to fail. So how could we create a credit builder product that enables people to access finance for things that are a good idea to go into debt for in a way that doesn't then impact their ongoing financial life? And maybe we've got some interest from overseas around our approach. We don't want to control the magic, so we're transparent and open about how we're doing this. We don't want to be Money Sweetspot global, but if we're learning things, we're happy to share. And I hope that we have competitors and more innovation.
There's not an equivalent overseas.
No, there isn't. There are social lending microfinance organisations, but but focusing on a financial reset and debt consolidation, linking it to financial education as a financial benefit off your loan or into a savings account, that's pretty unique.
With empowering the people who are going through the process.
Yeah, an adult to adult relationship, walking alongside, not telling, asking, providing choices. Yeah, and we're only able to do that because of our investors and our funders, because they don't have a profit or a return motive as number one.
Sasha Lockley, massive thank you for joining me on Purposely.
You are very welcome. Thanks for the chat.
Cheers.